Okay, I'll admit it. I'm a big fan of Harry Potter. I mean, you probably should have known that. I have the freaking Hogwarts castle made out of Legos behind me in all of these videos. I like the franchise, I like the stories, I like the world building, I like Harry Potter stuff. So naturally, I'm really interested in Hogwarts Legacy, the upcoming games set in that universe, which has lots of people extremely excited. But as you guys know, I try very hard to avoid falling victim to the same loop of disappointment that happens time and time again in this gaming industry that we all know and love. And that is that you get really excited for a game only to be horribly disappointed when it doesn't live up to your personal expectations. So in this video, I'm going to give you a skeptical look at Hogwarts Legacy. We're going to analyze the things that look really good about the game, but also look at the things that look a little less than phenomenal. It's really easy for us to live in an echo chamber and just hype each other up, but when you do that, you end up with a Cyberpunk 2077 situation or a No Man's Sky situation when you get so excited that your blinders go on and you completely ignore all of the warning signs. So we're going to try to maintain a skeptical outlook while we look at the game today. Real quick, as a point of clarity, skepticism is different from cynicism. People often get them confused, but to be skeptical of something simply means that you don't believe the claim until there is adequate evidence to believe that claim. You're just not hopping on the hype bandwagon just because it happens to check a few boxes. You're going to wait until you have a compelling argument to convince you of the claim that this is something worth getting hyped up about. Cynicism would just be to knock it down and be, a hater for the sake of hating. It's the typical thing when you see like Xbots hating on PlayStation games or Sony ponies hating on Xbox games just cause they're going on another console. That's cynicism. That's something else. Here, we're simply trying to fairly and even-handedly evaluate the claim that Hogwarts Legacy looks amazing and is worth pre-orders and your hype and excitement. We're going to try to evaluate that and only settle on pursuing that as a conclusion if the evidence backs it up. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Otherwise, this video won't make a ton of sense. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified of all future Hogwarts Legacy videos that'll be going up on the channel. And of course, we're going to be doing a massive critique, analyzing every little detail of the game's open world design, narrative, everything else contained within. So again, if you want to get notified of that content the moment it goes up for everybody, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. But with that said, let's get into it. Now, the first thing we've all seen about Hogwarts Legacy is, of course, the amazing recreation of Hogwarts Castle, of the lands surrounding Hogwarts. It looks super freaking well done. And in all of the interviews with the developers, you can tell that there's a lot of passion here. This isn't, one of those cases like The Witcher on Netflix where they bring in a bunch of people who hate the source material to create the adaptation of it. No, you can tell the developers who are working on this game love Harry Potter and are trying very hard to treat it right and to recreate these areas, these rooms, and the feeling of the castle and everything else as respectfully and true to the source material as possible. And that's part of the reason many of us have gotten so hyped, because we've never had a game anywhere near like this where they've managed to recreate these scenes from the books and movies so accurately and true to the source material. So I think that is perfectly reasonable. It's decent and it makes sense to be excited for this because this looks freaking awesome. However, as we know from gameplay showcases of other games that we got super hyped for, like Cyberpunk, for example, it can sometimes be the case that a gameplay showcase or a trailer can look awesome, but they're being very selective with what they show you. It's not necessarily telling you the whole story. And this is one of those cases when you have to rely on the history of the development studio and the publisher to tell you if you should buy what they're selling you, what they're presenting to you, or if maybe you should look at it with a little more skepticism, not be totally sold on it being amazing just yet. So who is developing this game? Well, it's being published by Warner Brothers, as you can see up in the top left-hand corner and down here, but the primary development studio is Avalanche, with a bunch of help from Portkey Games. They're all working together. It's a huge project. Hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of people are working on this game. It's a massive, massive endeavor. They've released a ton of games since they first started publishing games back in 2005. As you can see here, it's quite a comprehensive list, as Wikipedia has conglomerated it. If we go all the way down to the bottom, you start to get to the newer games from like 2016, 17, 18. But the most recent releases were Gotham Knights, which I think we all know how that went. They put out Multiverses, which, to be fair, has been received pretty well, if we're being honest. Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, this was also received well, though it was kind of forgotten quickly. Back for Blood, which has all but been forgotten. It's now for sale. I just saw it last night on sale for like $7. It's kind of been run into the ground, if we're being real. Lego Star Wars Battles, I don't recognize these. There's a bunch of mobile games mixed in here as well, like Harry Potter Wizards Unite, if you're interested in that. But they've also published other games like Mortal Kombat, Hitman, the collection of Harry Potter movies, Injustice, that was a good one. Shadow of War, we won't talk about that one because that was a total disaster, monetized out the ass. But this is the point. They've been involved in a lot of stuff. I could point at the misses and say, oh, look, see, they screw it up really commonly. It seems like they have a bunch of games that are terrible. But let's be real. When you're as huge as Warner Brothers, you're going to have some hits and some misses. So I don't think it's fair to dismiss Hogwarts Legacy simply because the publisher has had a couple missteps with other releases, such as Gotham Knights. It does concern me that Gotham Knights launched in such a broken state because they're using similar technologies and tool sets to create Hogwarts Legacy, as far as we can tell. And if they couldn't figure out a way to polish that game, then what makes us think they'll polish this one? I don't know, but I don't think it's fair to just completely dismiss the game. But at the very least, it's a reason to sit back and, okay, I'm watching you, that kind of thing. I'm watching you. But what about these developers, Avalanche and Porky Games, the guys that are actually making the video game? Now, the one I want to focus on is Avalanche Studios. As far as we can tell, this is the team that's primarily developing this game. Porky Games is certainly involved, but it seems as though they're more focused on the broad picture of development. They're not necessarily involved in the minutia of day-to-day development, if that makes sense. It's a huge cross-collaboration thing, but the one that's most interesting to me is Avalanche. Now, who are these guys? Well, the reason I want to go through this is because there was a huge mistake made by a pretty large YouTuber that I won't call out because it was an honest mistake that I think anybody could make because they look very, very similar. And basically what they did is that they went to the wrong Avalanche Software Studios game developers. If you notice here at the top of the Wikipedia page, there's a little prompt that says not to be confused with Avalanche Studios. Avalanche Software, these are the guys working on Hogwarts Legacy. Avalanche Studios are not. And basically what this YouTuber did, again, an honest mistake, I'm not shaming anybody, but what they did is they looked at this and they thought that these guys were making Hogwarts Legacy, and they got really excited because these guys have been involved in some pretty cool open world games like Just Cause 2, Mad Max, which is one of my favorite games of all time, or at least of the last 10 years. It's really, really good and I think pretty underrated. But they've been involved in some big open world games that were pretty well received. But again, they're not the ones making Hogwarts Legacy. That's Avalanche Studios or Avalanche Studios Group. The team making Hogwarts Legacy is Avalanche Software. These guys have been very busy for a long time, going all the way back into the 90s, but their most recent games are a little less exciting than I think people realize. Cars 3, Driven to Win, a game that released in 2017 on the PS3 and Xbox 360 and the Wii U, in addition to like the PS4 and Xbox One. A 2017 game releasing on consoles that initially launched in like 2006. This is primarily a studio that's made a ton of kids games. As you can see, Disney Infinity, they were the primary studio behind that. Cars 2, Toy Story 3, Hannah Montana Spotlight World Tour. Oh, baby. Oh, dude, it's so much better than I could have possibly imagined. Wow. Okay. Well, you know what? Again, they can't all be winners. This is amazing. Look at this. Oh, these old like rhythm gesture games. Oh, dude. What happened to gaming? It used to be so cool. We used to have games like this that would release for $60. Now, what do we have? God, we've really fallen. This country's falling apart. Now, I'm not trying to poke fun at previous games they released in the mid to late 2000s, but I think it's important to understand, for one, this isn't the same team that made like Mad Max, like some people have reported. This is the team whose last game was Cars 3, Driven to Win. And that should just put into perspective what we're working with in terms of the group of developers that are working on the game. It's not to say that it's going to be terrible, but it's just to say that you shouldn't give them a bunch of extra credit and act as though these guys are like savants in the industry, when up to this point they've been playing in pretty minor leagues. And with Hogwarts Legacy, all of a sudden they've been brought up into the World Series. I mean, they are now playing on the big stage, and they have never done it before. And the last time I can think of that we saw a studio that had previously only done really small projects that then all of a sudden got thrust into the spotlight with a huge AAA game was probably Days Gone. That was a smaller studio, hadn't really done anything massive before, and then Sony marketed the ever-living crap out of Days Gone, and that title ended up launching in a pretty broken and buggy state. I still think that game is tremendous. I love Days Gone, and I would recommend it to almost everybody, but it is important to note that it's not that easy to make massive AAA quality open world adventure games. And it's definitely harder for teams that have never done it before. Now, to play devil's advocate, they have delayed this game multiple times, and they recently announced that they're delaying the Switch port and the last gen console versions of Hogwarts Legacy, presumably to really polish them and try to make them run a little bit more steadily, and instead just focus on the current gen console and PC version of the game for the worldwide launch in February, which is actually somewhat relieving. I can appreciate that they're going to take their time getting those versions of the game ready instead of launching them totally broken. I can respect it. And I know. It sounds like I'm just trying to be a Debbie Downer and I'm trying to bring down everybody. But honestly, I think it's important for us to evaluate these things with a level head and not just buy into the hype loop. Because guess what? If Hogwarts Legacy ends up being just as good as we all want it to be and it blows us all away, then we're going to be all the more excited. We're going to be like, wow, I really was not expecting it to come together as well as it did. I was pretty skeptical, but they nailed it, and we'll be all the more excited when it launches. But if it comes out and it's kind of buggy or it's just not what we were hoping for, then guess what? You won't have your feelings hurt as bad because you kept a level head and didn't buy into the hype. But okay, all of this is pretty speculative at this point. We've just been looking at what games they've previously worked on, the publisher and their spotty track record recently, most recently with Gotham Knights releasing totally broken, and this small studio all of a sudden being thrust into the spotlight like this. But now let's look at some stuff that they've actually done that actually gets me kind of concerned. As you saw on that list of games that Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment has released in the last 15 years or so, there are many titles which were decent that were totally broken and destroyed by heavy monetization. The easiest one to point to that these guys published was probably Middle-earth: Shadow of War. That game launched in 2017 to mixed reviews, primarily because the game itself was actually pretty good, but the developers were forced to ruin it by the publishers in order to ham-fist a ton of heavy monetization into the game. Basically, you needed a bunch of orcs in order to create these like battles and wars to take down fortresses. Is a really cool idea, but they also had a loot box system that you could pay for loot boxes, and in those loot boxes you would have drop rates for different legendary orcs so that you could skip out on the grind of having to level up orcs that you recruit while just playing the game. There were some reports that it would even take you as much as 200 hours of gameplay to do what could be done with only $10. Basically, they totally broke the game in order to force you or heavily incentivize you to give them money in the form of microtransaction purchases that would then skip that grind for you. And we've also seen this with other games and studios like Ubisoft, who make extremely large games and then put in XP boosters in the game that you can purchase for $5 to $10, which makes it so your XP levels up higher so that you don't have to grind as much side content. Basically, you're paying to play less of the game. But the important thing to note is that Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment has a history of doing this, of breaking games with heavy monetization in order to push you into giving them money. So I, for one, am going to be looking out for things that seem to indicate an inordinate focus on monetization and trying to milk this cash cow dry. But probably the best example of this is the Hogwarts Legacy Collector's Edition, as seen in this unboxing video that's playing right now. Collector's Editions are not for everybody. I have a ton of them because I like getting cool statues and art pieces from games that I love. It's just something that I like to do, to collect them. It looks cool in the studio, blah, blah, blah. However, when I watched this video showcasing what was in the Hogwarts Legacy Collector's Edition, I was utterly blown away because it is hilariously bad. You'll see as he begins unboxing it that there's really not a lot here. Pretty much the entire collector's edition is comprised of a plastic book, like you can see on screen right here, that plugs in with a massive white cable into an outlet on the wall, and then a little magnet makes that wand float about a centimeter above the page of the plastic book. And there it is. There it is, right there in all of its glory. It looks so stupid. I've actually made videos on this. I did it over on my live channel, Luke Stevens Live. You can look it up in the search bar or in the link tree in the description below the like button. And those videos I've made have collectively done almost 1 million views at this point of me just saying, look how stupid this is. Like, this is just dumb. Everybody seems to agree this is a very lackluster collector's edition, because you're probably looking at this and being like, okay, well, what else is there to really make this work? Nothing. They include the cardboard box as one of the selling points of the collector's edition. Everything you see on the table right there, that's the whole thing. And they want $300 for it. A steel book for a game you're going to get a digital code for, a plastic book with a massive white cord hanging out of it, and then a cardboard box for $300. Of course, there's access to a ton of digital items as well, such as the Kelpie robe, 72 hours early access, something we've seen EA do a ton for like Battlefield games, which we all know how that went. Dark Arts Garrison hats, and then you also get access to the Dark Arts Battle Arena, Thestral mount, Dark Arts cosmetic set, all of this stuff. And maybe that's worth $100+ to you or something, but I really just don't see it. I think that this is one of the worst collector's editions that I've seen in a long time. And speaking of those pre-order bonuses, let's not blow past that. You can see in here that in order to get access to a dedicated gameplay area, the Dark Arts Battle Arena, as you can see right here, you need to buy the deluxe edition. If you don't buy the deluxe edition, you don't get it. You just don't get access to that area of the game. And this battle arena was actually shown off in a relatively recent gameplay reveal that they did, where you can go into the Dark Arts arena and you get access to all of the Dark Arts spells, such as Avada Kedavra and all of those. And you can just use them freely and do whatever you want. It's a cool area because it's just no holds barred. You can do whatever you want in that area, but it is an entire dedicated combat arena within the game that if you don't pay them extra money after the game launches, probably $5 to $10, or if you don't buy the deluxe edition, you just won't get access to this, which is, for me, a really concerning sign. The fact that they're developing whole areas of the game before the game's even launched and cutting it out for what's effectively DLC or extra microtransactions and extra DLC purchases. It's concerning to me, to say the very, very least. And also, I mean, the balls of showing this off in a gameplay reveal to say like, yeah, check out this area that you won't get access to if you buy the cheap version of the game, the most affordable version of the game. It's just like, it rubs me the wrong way because it's like, oh, you're poor? Well, no, you're not going to get this part. No. You need extra money to get this part of the game. But if you got money, or like you're some YouTube loser, then you can get it and it'll be fine. But it's really concerning to me. And I hate this. I hate that it creates like two classes of players, some of which can afford to throw the extra $20-$30 to get it, and then others who just can't and are going to miss out on it. It just sucks. It just sucks. But okay, let's try to bring this home and come to somewhat of a conclusion, just to wrap all of this up without leaving us all super depressed. In my humble opinion, there are a lot of things about Hogwarts Legacy that look really, really cool. Just the recreation of Hogwarts Castle is enough to make a lot of people want to purchase this game. And I think it's going to sell ridiculously well regardless of the reviews. Even if it comes out and it gets 6 and 7s out of 10s, I still think it's going to sell millions upon millions upon millions of copies, because every mom, dad, grandma, grandpa in the store who knows their kid likes Harry Potter stuff is going to see this sitting on the shelf for $60-$70. New game, Harry Potter, Hogwarts Legacy, whatever. And they're going to buy it for their kids for whatever, their birthday, just as a surprise gift, whatever. It's going to be the talk of the town, and it's going to do well regardless of how much heavy monetization they put in here. And hopefully this is something that the developers and publishers are not relying on too much, because what this is known as in marketing and in business is inelastic demand. Basically, other factors that normally would influence demand in the case of video games, review scores and things like that, word of mouth, positively or negatively, all of those things don't really affect the demand. It's inelastic. It doesn't respond to outside pressures. And that's where we're at with Hogwarts Legacy. I think we're looking at a very inelastic demand surrounding this game. It's going to sell ridiculously well, regardless of reviews, regardless of whether or not they cut out another battle arena and make you pay for it. And that's really what this video is trying to combat a little bit, to reintroduce some elasticity into the demand. Because if you look at this and you say, I'm really excited, I hope it's great, but there are a couple of things that are a little concerning, such as cutting chunks of the game out before it's even released for sale on the side for extra money. That's concerning. The really cheap and lazy collector's edition shows that they're really trying to milk this dry. The fact that the studio hasn't done anything like this before, the publisher's last major release was an absolute disaster. All of these things should get the red flags waving. And yes, I have a red flag for these very instances. It gets the red flag waving. But the game could still be perfectly amazing and a 10 out of 10 across the board. It's just to say that you are going to withhold judgment and hype until there is adequate evidence to conclude that the game is going to be amazing, until you've seen the reviews, until you've watched a streamer you like play it, until you yourself have gotten to try it for the first time. There is no shame in simply withholding judgment and not buying into the hype. If anything, I think it's a virtue. I think it's something you should be very, very proud of. And it's a culture we try to cultivate on this channel, because again, it would be easier for me to just be like, oh, Hogwarts Legacy looks like the greatest game ever made and I'm gonna lose my crap at the moment it releases. I'm gonna take off all of this time and I'm gonna make sure I play the crap out of it. I could do all that stuff and people would love it and get excited for it and buy into the hype as well. But frankly, that would be irresponsible, because YouTubers and influencers, as cringe as that term is, have a responsibility, a fiduciary duty to you, the viewer, to be not just level-headed, but also to remember that what we recommend and don't recommend can have a significant impact on the buying habits and decisions of our audiences and viewers. If I come out and I tell you after playing this game in an early access preview and I'm like, oh guys, it's amazing, you should absolutely play it. Or like some people said around Cyberpunk, where they come out and say, it's the game of my dreams. They say that, you go and you spend money on the game when it's totally broken or it ends up not being what I made it out to be. I just pushed you into doing that. Like, that's, maybe it's certainly not illegal, I don't think, but at the very least, it's extremely unethical to do that type of thing. And I find it slimy and gross, because what I would be doing is trading my integrity for making these videos to just get some quick clicks and perhaps grow quicker on YouTube by buying into the hype and having a couple of videos go viral when I'm hyping it up. I just don't want to do that. So even though this video is not the kind of video where I'm just hyping it up for the sake of hyping it up, I hope you understand that it comes from what I'm attempting to have be a good place where I'm trying to make sure that you and I don't get our hopes inordinately up and that we don't buy into the hype until there's reason to buy into the hype. Right now, I think the game looks great. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited. The fact that they've been so freaking transparent with all of these gameplay reveals and all of the transparency they've had related to gameplay, and even just showing off what they're going to be charging for extra through the deluxe edition and everything else. I think that that is a great sign. We very rarely see games that end up being bad show that much transparency. So I think it's a really good sign that they're willing to do that. If I had to bet, I would personally put a good amount of money on Hogwarts Legacy living up to the hype and being very, very good. That's my personal theory, but I still think the possibility is there for it to disappoint. And I don't want you guys to be disappointed because I hyped you up needlessly. So this video is trying to look at some of the pros and cons to evaluate a little more evenly whether or not this game is worth your pre-order, worth your attention and excitement, and hopefully you got something out of it. But like I said, I'm going to continue to cover Hogwarts Legacy as we get closer and closer to its launch. So if you want to see all of the newest gameplay reveals, trailers, analysis of the gameplay, the reviews when the review embargo goes up, I will be covering all of that. Subscribe to get notified of all of that, and also subscribe to just follow a channel that's not going to hype you up just for easy clicks, but rather is going to try to keep a level head and be honest with you and not a prick. I mean, I'll be real, I'm totally capable of being a prick. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm a YouTuber, so don't get it mistaken. But I'm gonna try my best not to. But with all of that said, thank you for watching. I love each and every single one of you more than you could possibly know. Again, subscribe, ring the bell, like the video if you enjoyed it. I love you all very, very much. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.